The real Matrix is not a computer simulation. It's not a movie, nor does it have anything to do with a red pill. The real Matrix is a false, illusory worldview grafted upon us from birth through the white society's monopoly over narratives. This is all possible because public perception is not shaped based upon facts nor reality. Public perception of reality is shaped by the narratives that are fed into the society. Therefore, all that's required for the distortion of reality is to repetitively feed false narratives into a society. The public at large will then function based upon those false narratives rather than the true reality. It's what's called an illusionary truth effect. Because the ruling white elites controls all of the narratives that are fed into a society, they therefore literally owns the perception of reality. This allows them to distort the perception of reality to be seen the way they want it to be seen. They systematically feed false narratives into a society that creates and sustains false assumptions within the society that aids them in maintaining their position of white social dominance. More specifically, the real matrix are societal conditions created and sustained by misinformation, distortion of facts, denial of truth, and even the manipulation of the past to falsely exalt Caucasians. It's an elaborate perception management system. Perception management is a technique that involves altering the perception of reality to suit the objective of the ruling class. It is a well-proven system that is an essential part of modern information warfare. I never said that what I teach would be easy for all to comprehend. I only said that it would be the Black liberating truth, the truth that emancipates your mind from white mental slavery. Perception is not reality. Just because you think something is reality doesn't make it reality. Here's a dictionary definition of perception. It's the way of regarding, understanding, or interpretation of something, a mental impression. Now, here's the dictionary definition of reality: the world or the state of things as it truly is, as it truly exists, an absolute, self-sufficient or objective, and not subject to human decisions or conventions, but the actual fact, the reality. Now you see clearly perception and reality have different meanings. Perception acts as the lens through which we view reality, and our perception of reality is shaped by the narratives that are fed into society. Because Caucasians are controlling all of the narratives that are fed into society, they've misshaping the perception of reality in ways they want it to be seen. They've literally whitewashed the perception of reality. Here's an example of how our society is functioning based upon a false narrative that falsely exalts whites. Currently, the masses are functioning based upon a narrative that most inventions that have revolutionized the world were invented by Caucasians. And moreover, that Black people are the leeches of society that haven't invented much throughout history. This perception greatly aids the white society in maintaining their social dominance over Black people. But it's not reality. It is an elaborate white deception. They've distorted the perception of reality. The distortion of reality is much easier than you realize. All you have to do is just keep repeatedly feeding false narrative through media ads, falsely scripted movies, miseducation. And before long, everyone will accept those distorted narratives. Those lies becomes the false reality that society functions based upon. Repetition makes a disclosure appear to be more truthful. It's a social science, okay? Now, case in point, the white society has distorted the perception of reality by miseducating the masses to believe that Thomas Edison is responsible for lighting up the world. However, the true facts and reality is that after Thomas Edison patented his light bulbs, no companies purchased it, no mass produced it. This is because it was deemed not efficient enough. It lit very dimly and only lasted a few minutes. The inventor, whose light bulb was purchased, mass produced, and that was spread around the world, was actually invented by an African American inventor named Lewis Latimer. He sold his light bulb patent to the U.S. Electric Company in 1881. He was also dispatched around the world to oversee its installation. Therefore, in reality, it was actually a black man that lit up the entire world. Latimer literally wrote the book on electric lighting and also holds the pattern for the first electric lamp. He's also the man that drew up the pattern schematic design for Graham Bell's telephone. The white society feeds lies into society, and we function based upon those lies rather than the true reality. The white society also miseducates us by teaching us that Henry Ford invented the first automobile. It was actually an African American inventor and carriage company entrepreneur named Charles R. Patterson that built the first automobile. The C.R. Patterson and Son Company started out as a carriage building firm in 1873. In the early 1900s, Patterson and his son converted the company from a carriage business to an automobile manufacturing company. His first car was released in 1905 and sold for $850. It had a four-cylinder Continental engine. C.R. Patterson began making automobiles long before Henry Ford, and his automobiles were considered much more sophisticated. C.R. Patterson and Sons were forced out of business by Henry Ford in 1939. Your perception of reality is an elaborate white deception created by false narratives that have been fed into society and fed into your mind. And you're seeing society through this distorted lens created by the white society. It's a distorted lens designed to maintain their white social dominance. It is the real matrix. Here's a relevant historical fact that they've withheld from their whitewashed history books. Within 80 years following the abolishment of slavery, and in spite of receiving no reparation and wrought by cultural traumas caused by the continued injustice of white racism, African Americans submitted 726 invention patent applications to the U.S. Patent Office. This isn't only extraordinary under these circumstances and so closely following slavery, but it also more than doubled the number of patents submitted by Caucasians during the same period. This scenario of black people outperforming whites in the inventions of revolutionizing inventions has never ended. Quiet as is being kept, most inventions that have revolutionized the world were either in fact invented by black people or were directly inspired by early inventions made by black people. This is the hidden reality. I know, when a well-packaged web of lies has been sold gradually to the masses over generations, the truth will seem utterly ridiculous and a speaker will sound like a raving lunatic. I understand that fact, but this is the reality that they don't want you to see. Without black people, there would exist no internet, no cell phones. We wouldn't have cameras and microphones on our cell phones. We wouldn't have the accurate weather forecasting system. We wouldn't have the cataract laser removal scope. There would be no emails, no GPS, no hearing aids, no touch-tone phones, no caller ID, no home surveillance security systems, no motorized vehicles, no steam engines, no traffic lights, no working light bulbs, no elevators, therefore no skyscrapers, no air conditioning, no modern color PC, no 3D movies, no central heating, no refrigerators, no helicopters, no washing machines, no lawnmowers, no dryers, no refrigerated trucks, no blood banks, no fiber optics, no nanotechnology, no female sanitary pads, no bathroom tissue holders, no pencil sharpeners, no tricycle. The world would be significantly lesser without black people. Black people have in fact enriched the lives of every person on this planet through our many inventions. This fact is being deliberately kept from the public through the white society's monopoly over information. The truth of the matter is that white people invented the Patent Office and have always used it to steal the intellectual property rights from black people. In order for black inventors to get their inventions mass produced, they have to go before white companies. These white companies acquires the right to these inventions and then place white faces in front of the technology. This scenario allows the white society to continue exploiting the genius minds of black people while maintaining the appearance that all technological advancements are coming from the minds of Caucasians. Through this whitewashing practice, the white society has literally whitewashed the perception of reality to be seen as they want it to be seen. There's even more. Everything are lies from the white society. Although it's a fact that Caucasians share more physical characteristic with the European Neanderthals than they presently do with we Africans. They've created the false narrative that totally separated themselves from the Neanderthals of Europe by claiming themselves as being African Homo sapiens that turned white due to migrating to the colder climate of Europe, an alleged form of mutational albinism. They also claim themselves as being the highest evolved Homo sapiens, while depicting we Africans as being the lowest evolved Homo sapiens. To subliminally convey this falsehood, they place the darkest skin upon the lowest primate on the Darwin evolutionary chart while placing themselves upon the highest evolved. This subliminally conveys the message that whites are inherently superior to blacks. However, it's been scientifically proven by DNA analysis that Caucasians are not African albinos, but have instead inherited their skin color and their animalistic hair type from the Neanderthal DNA. It's also been scientifically proven that Africans' melanated chocolate-colored skin and woolly hair are the direct result of Homo sapien DNA. Africans are the only true Homo sapiens, and we are not even included in the Darwin evolutionary charts. Unlike Caucasians, Africans did not evolve from primates, but have instead always have been Homo sapien. Most people are unaware of the fact that when the early African Homo sapiens traveled into Europe, that they encountered thousands of pink-skinned Neanderthals already living in Europe. Neanderthals that have lived in Europe for more than 80,000 years, according to the experts. Although the Caucasians share more physical characteristics with those Neanderthals of Europe than they presently do with we Africans, they've, however, separated themselves from those Neanderthals of Europe and instead claimed themselves as being African Homo sapiens that became white due to migrating to the colder climate of Europe, a form of albinism. However, as I've stated, according to two new studies published in the journal Nature that looked at the DNA fossil hidden in the modern human genome, Caucasians are not African albinos, but have instead inherited their skin color and their animalistic hair type from the Neanderthal DNA. These studies also found that physical characteristics of black people are the characteristics of Homo sapiens. Africans are the true Homo sapiens, and the Darwin evolutionary chart does not apply to Africans. The history we've been taught has been lied. They perpetuate themselves as on top and we the lowest. They say we're closest to the ape. And that narrative creates false assumptions in society that aids in maintaining their dominance. The implications of these findings are enormous. This means that the Darwin evolutionary theory chart origin of species does not apply to Africans. This means that Caucasians are literally Neanderthals that masquerade themselves as being Africans. This might be a bit of a disappointment to those of you that favor the premise that all life originated from Africa and spread throughout there. However, the theory that Caucasians are of us has totally fallen apart. It's a falsehood. DNA analysis have scientifically proven that Caucasians are actually Neanderthals. They've separated themselves from their Neanderthal ancestors by customarily calling themselves Homo sapiens. However, the scientific term for Caucasian is in fact Homo sapiens sapiens. If you don't believe me, just Google it. In the age of information, black ignorance is now a choice. Caucasians are actually called, the scientific term, are Homo sapiens sapiens. They gave themselves a name that sounds close to Homo sapiens to confuse the masses and to fool the world to believe that they are in fact Homo sapiens. But the truth is that Caucasians are Homo sapiens. The repeated sapiens refers to a subspecies primate. I know. When lies have been told for many generations, the truth will seem absolutely ridiculous and a speaker sound like a raving lunatic. But it's the absolute truth. Research it. The Caucasians separate themselves from the Neanderthals and place themselves on the higher as the highest group. Now, according to social scientists, perception is more important than reality because people function based upon their perceptions of reality. So the white propagandist feeds false narratives into a society that falsely exalts whites. The Homo sapien derives from the Latin word meaning wise humans. Okay, you can Google this. Wise humans was originally applied to we Africans. Homo sapien mean wise humans. Google it. It's appropriate because Africans introduced science, writing, math, and philosophy to the world. Africans invented the wheel, paper, the calendar, and the concept of 24 hours in a day. Africans are the first to build in stone and the first to smelt metal. The world's oldest university, library, manuscript, encyclopedia, human prosthetics, mathematical tool, medical journal are all found in Africa. The world's largest wall ever built is not the Great Wall of China. It is the Great Wall of Benin in Africa. Africans civilized Europe. Africans introduced shaving, the use of toothpaste, perfume, fragrance oil, deodorant, and even introduced the daily bath to Europeans. Your perception of reality is an elaborate white deception. It's the real matrix. The real matrix is a false, illusory worldview grafted upon us from birth through the white society's monopoly over narratives. They systematically feed false narrative into our society, and the public function based upon those narratives rather than the true reality. This is the real matrix. Our society is functioning based upon these false narratives, and the belief in those false narratives empowers the white society and works to the detriment of we black people. One love and peace. Welcome to the real world.